Welcome everyone. We're going to give a few minutes for everybody to get logged in, but welcome. All right. As I mentioned, guys, this is going to be an interactive webinar. So down at the bottom of your screen, you're going to see there's a question and answer box. So please ask questions as we go along. We're going to be answering them at the end. And I mentioned that we're going to be using a tool called Slido. There will be permissions coming soon once I launch the survey. But basically what it is it's going to ask questions during the webinar so we can get feedback from you as we go along. Um, for everybody that's joining us right now, you might be wondering, why should I stick around and listen today? So we're being joined by two leaders in learning and development inside of two of the world's largest and most influential investment organizations, EQT and Lacasse. These groups manage hundreds and billions of assets and thousands of employees worldwide. So the companies we're talking to today aren't just dipping their toe into AI, they're building the future in real time, and we get to learn from the front line. So you're going to be getting the real story of how AI is impacting learning and development, what's actually happening inside of these organizations right now. We'll give you a clear starting point, some concrete ways to support your teams at totally different levels of readiness, and most importantly, mindset shifts that your organization must take as AI becomes part of everyday work. And one of the really big payoffs is that guests are going to be also getting a practical guide built directly from today's discussion. So I'm Samantha Fath. I'm the Director of Partnerships at Sama, and in my role, I work really closely with our clients to design coaching programs and other learning and development initiatives. And I'll be moderating today's session. And a quick intro to who Sama is. Our focus is on aligning people development with business priorities through things like executive coaching, data assessments, and training. We use large language models and other AI to give our clients a measurable way to see behavioral change in their people to drive business impact, which brings me why we're here today. We're joined by two incredible panelists, Monica Bolander from EQT. She spent her entire career in HR with the past decade dedicated fully to learning and development. So she's been at EQT for the last 17 years, a period in which it's grown from 150 employees in Europe to more than 2,000 colleagues worldwide. So it's grown quite a bit. She's seen a lot of change, and she has some academic roots in both finance and sociology. Monica combines analytical rigor with a deep understanding of human behavior. She's really passionate about designing growth and leading learning initiatives that truly create impact and drive lasting change, and believes that with AI, we finally have the tools to be even more personalized, close to the business, and just in time. So thanks for joining today, Monica. And Kim, our second guest, she's an organizational psychologist who's been fascinated by human development ever since she first stumbled upon Maslow's hierarchy of needs and wondered how many of us has ever reached self-actualization. So she spent 25 years in consulting, 24 of them with the same firm, where she led leadership assessments, headed the coaching practice as a partner, then came a mid-year pivot when she moved into internal HR to experience the challenge and joy of helping talent thrive within one organization. So today, she's the Senior Director of Talent Management at Lacasse, Quebec's pension fund, managing nearly 500 billion in assets. And Kim draws on her doctoral dissertation in intrinsic motivation, over a decade in clinical psychology training, and her passion for behavioral economics to make development stick. So her mission is to turn these learning strategies into real impact, and now with the power of AI. So thank you so much for joining today, both of you, and let's get into it. So we're going to break this conversation up into three parts. So we'll talk about the impact of learning and development and AI right now, what we see coming in the next 12 months, and then at 5 years. So let's kick the conversation off to the audience. So I'm going to start that Slido. And there we go. There should be votes ready for you guys. Go ahead and answer that Slido. Do you guys see that there? Should be there. Can't see it. Okay, let me try that again. Bear with me here for one moment. There we go. Now you should see it. So the question is, how would you describe your organization's current relationship with AI? Just curious from the crowd. Are we just getting started, experimenting in small pockets? Okay, that seems pretty popular. Moving quickly in some areas, integrating it into workflows across the organization. We're already experts and everyone is supported by their own agent. If anyone answers that, you should give us a call and tell us how you did that. Oh, I see that a hand is raised. Elodie, if you have a question, would you mind shooting it over in the chat? Let's see here, because we'll be answering those questions at the very end. All right. So, guess we've probably got enough answers now. So I would say the number one is in experimenting in small pockets. So I think that that's where we're all kind of at right now. And, I think what we've been hearing a lot from our clients is, it's an all hands on deck change. And with that comes a new way of working and influencing everyone at the company to get on board with AI adoption. So I'm going to kick this off as a first question to Kim. What are the strategies you're using to make that happen?
So can I first say a disclaimer here, Sam, but because in all humility, you're setting us up as the experts, and I have to, as I don't think that I can pretend in any way I found the magic wand on how to fully integrate AI into L&D. I think what I'm excited about sharing today is some of the reflections that we have, some of the things that we're trying to do, and hopefully that will be helpful for everyone. And I hope that I'm going to be learning today at the same time. So I just wanted to put that out there. We've been lucky enough at La Caisse since Copilot came out 2 years ago now to automatically have been put in a partnership with IT. And so there was this expectation that was set from the beginning that HR, talent and performance, we're called here, was a necessary partner to make sure that we could really go into full adoption mode when it comes to anything AI. And so Copilot was kind of our first experience with that. And I see it kind of as like the first year or two, we were kind of stumbling around in the dark a little bit, kind of trying to find our footing. A lot of role and responsibility clarification was necessary from the beginning. I think as we were working together, two, sometimes three or four different teams. Obviously, we're not experts in technology and L&D. But what was interesting was how could we collaborate in a way to really leverage the strengths that we did have, which is understanding how people learn, understanding how people change their behaviors, and really getting into that full-blown adoption. So that was something I think that as we've been collaborating together is being more and more recognized and allowed us to really, like I said, leverage the different strengths that we all have. And I always use the example that I'm not someone who's great at technology, and my family always finds it hysterical. And I'm even talking about this subject right now. But because I'm not great at technology, I think I'm a great use case, right? So if the technology departments together, we can come up with some type of program when we're launching new technologies, such as Copilot, and I get it, I understand it, and I use it, then we're going to be good across the whole organization. So that's, I think, the first thing. Where we were able to really talk to our IT about how do you make sure that you're getting learner engagement? How are you measuring adoption? What does success look like? Because we would tend to just maybe roll out 30-minute videos, that Microsoft was providing and things like that. And we were a little bit skeptical that whether that would be good enough. So we're not perfect. We're getting better. I think every few months, growth mindset. And then I think as we're stumbling out of that fog, the light that I see coming for us and our organization in 2026 is that we've just gone through a massive reorg or restructuring where we've actually grouped together strategy, HR, and technology under one large executive vice president. And I think that's really something interesting. And when I read and when I look at the different organizations that are talking about how to really bring AI into the flow of our work, that's something that organizations like Gartner are really suggesting. You absolutely need to bring HR and IT together. And I think with strategy, which is kind of that kingpin about how to hold it together, that's something for us that we see as very optimistic going forward.
Very nice. Yeah. And it's so funny you mentioned like, why are you the one talking about technology? It's such a good point because it's everywhere. Like you can't avoid it. And everyone in learning and development, whether you're able to connect your AirPods to your iPhone, connect to Wi-Fi, everyone has to take care of that. So, what about you, Monica? Tell me about you.
I mean, I must reflect on what Kim said to start with because I love this kind of getting HR, L&D, and IT in the same in the same structure. I think that's a winning place to be. It's really about collaboration, and that's my main takeaway here. It's the collaboration with all other teams, but most of us, for our part, it's been how do we make this happen. It's very, our leadership is very vocal about it, and they are showing the expectations on the organization to work smarter and really integrate AI in everything we do. So what we have started to do is like launching all those AI tools, not everyone using them at the same time, but it's a starting point. And then we did the basic trainings on how to get people starting, and early adopters won't maybe join these, but that's about getting the broader mass on board. So I think those foundational courses, not let's not neglect them in this setting, because it's something that it's new to so many.
Mhm.
And yeah, tech and digital team is working super close in our organization to make sure that we make this need based, and we are collaborating with them on that.
Yeah, definitely. And it's the first time really that HR and tech are going to be working closely together. And, you're getting I would say a mandate from the organization just to implement AI and get the early adopters are easy, right? But there's other people that we have to get on board. But Kim, tell me when you got the mandate to
Mhm.
start, implementing AI, what was that like?
So again, I refer to that fog that I mentioned to you earlier. I think it was kind of nebulous. I don't think it was clear like what was our role versus IT's role. But I think it was probably, last winter when our EVPs were sitting down, both from technology and HR, and they said, okay, what we can bring to the table is what are the soft skills that we absolutely need to have in place that are going to allow for that adoption and as quickly as possible, so that each time we do some type of rollout, we're accelerating that curve. And though, so the mandate they gave me is, as I'm about to leave on vacation, is like, what are those soft skills? What does it take so that people are learning how to learn? And that's
Mm,
what we called it, right? So I left for vacation, went up north, and I know you find this story kind of funny. When we were chatting beforehand, was I'm snowshoeing in the forest, and I'm just like, okay, like, what does it mean learning to learn? And what do I think that takes, right? So I said, okay, first of all, if someone is really in a learning posture, and if we're really building a learning organization, I think fundamentally the first component is that people need to want to learn. This seems really basic, but I don't think it's often something that is there in all of our L&D initiatives. So wanting to learn. And then I'm like, okay, great. We've got people who are motivated. Then I think people need to know, they need to be skilled in how do we go about learning, right? And so what was coming to mind there for me was um, I need to be questioning myself and my own beliefs and my own knowledge, and opening myself up to acknowledge that maybe I do need to learn something here, and maybe this will be useful for me. And at the same time, I need to be able to have this critical judgment, not just about myself and my learning, but about what it is that's being presented to me. And that seemed really critical when we're thinking about AI in particular, when we're talking about the hallucinations, when we're talking about the fake news and things like that, is how can we be building this critical judgment, or and that openness to learn, kind of cognitive flexibility, I would call it.
mhm.
The third component that I was thinking as, again, as I'm walking and snowshoeing, is we need to have this environment that's going to be supporting this, right? Because from my psychological background, I tend to kind of go to that, what does that individual need? But I think if we look from a systemic type of perspective, we also need to be thinking about how can the environment be supporting people as they're learning, knowing that necessarily they're not going to be perfect as they're
Mhm.
starting out, and they're going to stumble and they're going to make mistakes, but we want to create that favorable environment. So we put those three elements, and we kind of fleshed out what those concepts are, and we actually created a learning playbook around
Oh,
them and said, here are the things that we need to make sure that whenever we're doing something where we want to change behavior, and here we are, of course, applying it to technology and Copilot and other elements of AI, this is what we need to embed into the learning design. This is what we need to put in place beforehand and afterwards to make sure that the learning sticks. We need to be putting right up front and foremost, what's in it for them, why they should be engaged, how can we make it as dynamic and interesting for them, and how can we bring that why really close up, I think, for them. So that's maybe where I would stop. And I know Monica has some other elements to add there, but that's kind of how we started.
yeah. What about you, Monica?
I mean, it's a great story. I love it. And I mean, I was thinking about this given being given the mandate. I think I never formally was given a mandate, but it's so much on top of the agenda of everything that we do, and I think that is the success around why are we really focusing on this, and the sense in the organization is that everyone needs to understand it, and that's where we come in as well as L&D in terms of that growth mindset that you actually kind of referred to here, Kim. And do I have a great story? Well, I don't. I think it's we all need to do it, and my story is probably that we do it every day, and everything we do from an L&D perspective needs to be integrated in this. And just the other week, we finalized our AI learning assistant on the internet. And those are the small steps we're taking to kind of all the time push something new out and make it a learning experience and support the organization. We just need to be aware, back to collaboration, I would probably come back to it many times, to be not team centric in the ways we're solving for this, but really company focused in terms of how do we support this as a company. And that's where we get the mandate from.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when we're taking a look at that too, it's impacting everything we're doing. Like you said, even though you didn't get an official mandate, you feel it. It's in the air. It's something that everybody has to implement, and it's changing a lot. So I'm curious, you know, Kim, when and Monica, you'll have a chance to answer too. Is I was thinking about work and like how is work versus the workforce already starting to change because of AI and in learning and development.
And I think it's interesting to refer to those two elements, right? Work and workforce, because as we've been working on our strategic workforce planning initiatives this year, we kind of realized that we've been thinking a lot about the workforce angle and what is it going to take for our talent, our employees to upskill given what we don't know what will happen yet with AI. And so we've had a lot of that focus on it. And that's where it came from, that mandate about what does it take to learn, because we know people are going to be having to learn continuously and more rapidly. So we've been thinking a lot about that. And then it kind of came to us that we need to have an kind of a balanced focus on how is the work itself going to be changing. And so we actually worked with an outside firm who came to us with a tool that they had, which looks at the impact that AI is expected to have on different roles.
Mm.
And they kind of sold us on using this tool when they told this story about an organization that they had accompanied that was, for example, a call center that they had. And they looked at the impact that AI would have on these call center jobs, that a lot of those tasks could be automatized, right? And they could be using AI in different processes and things like that. And instead of, going with the fact that, okay, we're going to be cutting people, what they went with was, okay, we're going to take away parts of these jobs, we're going to automatize them. And then how are we going to reskill our people who are not necessarily having to be quite as administrative in their responses to our clients, And here they think they were selling different accessories for the home and things like that. And so they actually reskilled their employees to become interior designers so that they could upsell their clients as well. So, okay, I noticed that you've just bought this. Could I also suggest that this lamp might be nice with this bed, for example, or something like that? So I thought that was kind of a really interesting example for us where we thought, okay, if we can get a handle on which roles within our organization are going to have the highest impact, and that's where we focus, as opposed to thinking we're going to focus on everything, because that's just not possible. How can we making sure that we have that balance between the work and the workforce?
Yeah, definitely. And, gone are the days of not needing to change, right? Gone are the days of not needing to learn. What about for you, Monica?
I mean, I think we finally, for real, can solve the problem of relevant learning in the flow of work. In the flow of work has been a wording for L&D in many years now, and maybe now we do have the tools to actually get
Mm.
there for real. And we're just getting started, right? So as Kim started this, we are all new starters in this. But I think that L&D will move more from being content creators to being learning enablers instead, and enable people to learn. That will be our role, rather than the creators of content. Uh, and it's trial and error time, and we need to be quite bold, but also aware about the restrictions and where do we need to talk to legal and compliance on, and the integrity aspect of it as well. But we can't sit still. We need to jump on the train. That's where I am. And yes, it's a fun place to be in L&D right now, and it will change for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun place to be, and it's all changing so quickly. And I was thinking about the fact that since we all are going to be impacted by AI, that everyone's job is going to evolve and change the way that we interact in the workplace. And that's really now falling on learning and development to help us all get there. So I'm kind of equating you guys to being the superheroes of work right now, since everyone in the world is going to be impacted. So how do you guys think that learning and development is going to come to the rescue for that? And we could start with Monica. Go ahead.
I love the fact to be a superhero, number one. But I mean, it connects very much to the above in terms of L&D is a fun place to work, and if we can be the superheroes of being closer to actual needs of the organization, be proactive with people-centric solutions. But one really important topic for me is not only about looking at skills and reskilling and upskilling. We talk about sustainability on the very high performing people. We in L&D and together with HR, we have a big role to continue to talk about mental health and how do we keep resilient to all the changes that's happening around us. We will have a super important role to play, not only on skills, but more on these soft factors as well, and leadership in terms of change and transformation, and kind of creating learning-centric organization. That has never been more real than it is right now.
Yeah, definitely. And you were talking about how it's going to really change the way L&D is interacting with the people today. And, Kim, from your side, what were you thinking?
So I really like the angle that Monica's bringing up around mental health. And I think that's not something that we would always think about in our sandbox, actually, from an L&D perspective. So I think that's really interesting. And we know it's more and more a problem worldwide. And we saw that during COVID, for example. So I think it's really interesting already to name that. I think AI can absolutely be helpful in that regard, in terms of raising the flag when we're starting to notice that there's something happening. I'm thinking back even 2 years ago at the very beginning of Copilot. I remember my boss asking teams, how's Kim feeling this week? And it was Kim seems to be feeling pretty positive about her projects, but except for this, and I'm like, oh my God, this was 2 years ago. So I'm just imagining as AI goes across all of our different systems within an organization, how it can maybe see that little ripple in a lake before others can discern that something is happening. So I think there's something there because our leaders cannot be doing all of this without some help. Having said that, I think and Monica's talked a lot about already too. We have to be careful about how we use information and about compliance and things like that. There's a slippery slope there that we have to think carefully about, I think, as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, on one side of the coin, you have the ability to really meet someone where they are and help them in the moment of where they truly need it and use that information for good. But, that's such a good example, Kim, when you talk about Copilot summarizing your feelings and how you're doing to your boss. That can be used in many ways. So, when we're looking at how we're starting to use AI, since there are really not a lot of guardrails around it, how can we ensure that it's being used in a way that upholds integrity? Monica, I'm going to kick it off to you because I know you're pretty passionate about that.
Yeah, I'm passionate about it, and it's one of my biggest challenges because integrity is obviously super important, and how do we uphold it? We can't take the risk of overstepping this in terms of not moving forward. So it's a clear balance, and but always have integrity in mind. We have transparency as one of our values internally. So we're working with a lot of transparency, but that's not on the personal level, which is the risk with AI, that how am I sharing my inner thoughts and which questions I'm question asking and so on. So I think that clear guidelines, clear policies that make people feel safe on how we use AI, we really need to integrate that in the processes as well. And also compliance comes in here very clearly. I mean, in Europe at least, it's getting regulated more and more.
Yeah, and it's you can put those guardrails in, but like as AI learns and it's got machine learning, that's going to be ever evolving too. We're going to be finding things falling through the cracks all the time. So it's a continuous way of having to monitor and keep people safe from the AI basically. But Kim, what do you think?
I think like integrity is such a tough concept. I think it's so critical. And I think, Monica and I are both in financial institutions, so we have a lot of guardrails, right? So I think that's helpful in a lot of ways. Sometimes it's a challenge when it comes to experimenting sometimes as well. But I think integrity from the human standpoint is probably another one of those soft skills that comes up as something that's going to be gaining and more and more importance in the next 5-10 years. And I think back to when I went to a big conference on learning and development already like almost 3 years ago, and we were looking at what are going to be the critical skills that we'll be needing for financial analysts once AI is in place. And it's not going to be financial modeling and things like that. It's not going to be as much as those technical skills. But one of the main elements that came across in that workshop that I was in was integrity. And as an organizational psychologist, I have to tell you that I don't have the answer to this. I would do leadership assessments, but already knowing how to assess someone, whether they have integrity or not, is really difficult. You can
Mhm.
kind of get your outliers on that normal curve, the people who are absolutely lacking it and the ones that are like really maybe even rigid. But how can you differentiate? It's really difficult. And how can you develop that? It's really, really difficult. So I think, again, from a financial institution standpoint, we have tons of trainings on fraud and corruption. We have,
Mhm.
ways that to signal if there are elements that are going wrong. But I think we're going to have to like re-examine that in a whole new way going forward because we won't be able to discern it in the same way anymore.
Yeah, it's almost like we know not to steal, right? Like we know that as like a value, but now
Yeah.
we're going to learn a new set of values. And when the AI is being developed, it needs to have those safeguards around what's able to happen. But as things are developing, and a lot of organizations are building AI in-house, and so there's not a
Yeah.
team, right, building
Yeah.
those safeguards around it until something happens, most likely. And we talk a lot about like implementing new tools all the time, and that there's going to be failure. There's going to be situations like this that we're going to have to adapt to. And, it really leaves me feeling like it's all so big when we talk about it. And, like how do we do this? Because it's, we have so many different levels of readiness. You have individuals who jump in and they're like, let's do AI, I'm ready to go. And then you have the other side of the coin where, the person's been in their role for a really long time. They want to stay in their lane. They're very good at what they do right now. They want to get their paycheck and go home. And so, how do we support people across all these different levels of readiness, Monica? What do you think?
Well, when you spell it out like that, it is overwhelming, right? Because how do we meet this? But I think we need to make sure that we meet people where they are, and that won't be on generational levels. It won't be as easy as it is on kind of hierarchical levels, XYZ application. But we need to find the ways now to meet. Where are the early adopters? Where are those that are maybe not jumping on this train with us? But finding a way to meet them where they are, but everyone needs to understand that you can't sit still. That's the kind of thing that we need. The message that needs to go out to everyone is that we need all to chip in on this, and everyone's voice is valuable. That's what we have been very clear about as well, because this is about making sure that we make the best of people and help them grow in the best possible way. So it is for everyone's sake. And I think it will, if we make it something positive, it will for sure be easier and not something mandatory and must do.
Yeah. And when you think about the fear around it, right? Like people wondering, like, is this going to take my job? We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow with AI. And because we're all at this start of the journey, we have to learn again and again and again. And it's kind of this like exhaustion of continuously learning. Am I going to have to make the same effort again in 6 months, in a year, in 2 years? How many times am I going to have to continuously, let's say, reinvent myself? So the shift of mindset for everybody in the way that they're approaching work and the world makes me wonder from the crowd. So I'm going to kick it off to you guys. As this is changing, what do you guys expect will happen in the next 12 months with work and AI? So I just kicked the question off to you guys. It should be a Slido. So feel free to answer that. So we've got it's going to replace entry level, increase performance for all, decrease productivity, reduce headcount, overwhelm people. All right, so we're seeing what we expect AI to have an impact in the next 12 months. Give it just a few minutes for people to answer. It looks like increase the performance of all is most popular. And, just kicking it off to you, Monica, what do you think is going to happen in the next 12 months, specifically for learning and development in AI?
I mean, I see very positively on the results that we're showing here, that it's the increase of everyone's kind of possibilities that is, we believe that this will help us, right? And for L&D, it's the hardest question right now, right? Hardly know how to adopt next month. Uh, but honestly, it is to integrate it in everything we do. And I think that once we have tried and been kind of forward thinking, we will be able to solve this very quickly in terms of providing training to people when they really need it. Uh,
Mhm.
I think that we're close to that finally. I don't think classroom trainings, because that will give us something else. It gives a network, it gives communication, but we will also be more productive because you will have easier access to answers.
Yeah, I love that when, you think about learning and development and being able to give that specific tailored development to the individual needs. Like that's like we're right there. And I think that's exciting. Kim, what about you? What do you think in the next 12 months for L&D?
Yeah, I think that's the promise that we've been talking about, right? I think that we've actually barely scratched the surface of it, right? How can we offer that just for me, just in time, just enough type of learning that
Mhm.
we've been struggling to do? So I think like next year, what I see is I see, first of all, we need to be really into the experimentation. And like Monica was saying, how do we embed it into everything that we do as much as possible and just asking ourselves those questions? You know, like we have a lot of corporate training programs that we offer for several years now with maybe different suppliers, and they have certain ways of doing things. I think about like, how do we how do we prepare presentations, for example, to present to the board or the executive committee? And they weren't using AI at all. So we're the ones going to our supplier saying, time out. I understand you have an expertise. That's great. And we want to leverage that. But we insist that you integrate AI and how you're going to be training our people to prepare those presentations, right? And that might be from using Copilot to revise and making sure that it's very business-like. You've used a very comprehensible language. It might be creating a fictitious board with what you know about the members and having them poke holes on it before so that you can prepare for it, because that's what we can do also with AI.
Yeah.
But we're sometimes having to impose that on our suppliers right now. And that's the kind of commitment that we're trying to make sure that we do, that each time we have a request, wait a second, can we make sure that we're integrating AI into this? So
Mhm.
experimenting, asking our suppliers to experiment, using it in our processes, whether it's agentic AI to free up some time and make things a little bit more seamless, allow us to be more scalable. And I think the other thing there in terms of experimenting, as I'm reading articles, there was a great one about ATD a couple of weeks ago about all that glitters is not gold. It's how can we make sure we're being intentional? So I don't want to be pushing AI everywhere if it doesn't make sense. I don't want to be
Uh-huh.
trying every AI tool because we have a certain limit in terms of what we can do resource wise. But what do we want to like, what rock do we want to turn over? What do we want to try? And then quickly, if it's not working, move on to something else. But be very cognizant of what it is we're trying from that experimentation perspective. And I think the other thing is that as we're talking about getting this learning and the flow of work right, it's how are we creating an environment that, as we said, is supporting this continuous learning mindset, right? And so that it's not something that we feel like, you said, Monica, like it's scary, it's big, right? That like, am I going to be, the tasks that I'm doing today, are the majority of them going to disappear? How am I going to reinvent myself?
Mhm.
But how are we going to create this environment where we're there to support you, right, as you're doing that? So, and that continuous learning mindset for me is just something that's not it's a non-negotiable, right? It's just we can't accept, and we talked about those early adopters, so there's people who are a bit more refractory in terms of embarking on change, but this is just absolutely a non-negotiable. And maybe I would just finish off my little soapbox speech here with just that I heard this quote a couple of years ago at a conference too that I loved. And the person said, when I stop learning, you may as well put me in a hole and throw dirt on me because I'm already dead. And I think for me, that's what it comes down to, is that sometimes I'll approach people with, would you like a coach? What would you like to work on? What do you see as your development priorities next year? And I'm always a bit flabbergasted when some people will say, I think I'm done. I think I'm good. Like I've developed myself. We're never done. And that's that whole self-actualization principle with Maslow that we talked about in the very beginning. Is it's an adventure. It's a road that we've never finished.
And it's even more relevant now because, the individuals who did say that in the past are now thinking, well, maybe not. I really do need to start thinking differently about when you mentioned reinventing yourself. And, I was thinking about mindset shifts and thinking about how we can transform this challenge into an opportunity. And I was thinking, Monica, I'll kick it off to you first. How do you see learning and development in the next 12 months helping reframe AI from a disruption to a solution?
I think it is so much as we already said, it's supporting uh, the the mindset shift change. It's about uh, um, how do I say this? It's about supporting the mindset change. It's about helping people to not be afraid to fail as well. because it is something about being vocal about that as well. We're trying things out and supporting with that is a big thing. And help people to adopt. We just launched an AI marketplace yesterday in terms of helping people to find the tool they need for the question they have. So back to Kim's question in terms of how do I know which tool even to use for this question? Well, we started now with the marketplace, and you search for I have this problem, and then you get the suggestion. So all those things that we can come up with, there is probably a solution for it. Just ask the question, and no questions are stupid questions. Who could think about the marketplace for AI really?
And
And
that's
Monica, you know what you're making, sorry, Sam, I'm
no,
jumping
no, no,
in
go ahead.
unscripted here. But you know, Monica, what you're making me think about is something that we haven't talked about so far is the organizational culture. And I
Yeah.
think that has a really big impact. You and I come from, again, the financial industry, and it's highly regulated. What we do tends to be more traditional, at least where I'm sitting at. And so this year, we've had to make a really big we've had to communicate in a very intentional and serious way to say that we actually want to be a bit better at taking risks. We want to actually be embracing change and embodying change more quickly and not kind of followers of change, even though we've been really good at adapting quickly and being resilient. And so what that means when we're asking people to take some risk is how are we making them feel comfortable in that environment to do so, because we are so regulated, because we are so much, you know, as a pension fund here in Quebec, we are very much scrutinized, right? And as soon as something gets out into the media, you know, it makes it's a big deal. If an investment doesn't work, or even if, you know, a presentation didn't go as well as we like, how do we feel that we're reacting to that from an organizational perspective so that we're allowing people to feel safe, like you've mentioned, about trying new things? And I think that's really, really important.
Yeah. We have a saying since we were founded that everything can always be improved at all times, and that's more true than ever.
I like that.
So having that in the back of minds and kind of dare to fail is also one of those on top of the agenda for L&D. Kind of what's our role in teaching people if we go away from the kind of technical training. It's so much about leading with example of being kind of out there trying and be vocal when you fail as well, because that's part of of this experiment that we are all in right now, because that's exactly what it is.
Did you have
On a
anything else you
societal
wanted to
level.
add?
Or
Yeah.
apologies, Dan.
Kim, did you have anything you wanted to add to the disruptor to solution topic? You love that topic, so.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe I would just meant to go quickly back to what Monica said a little bit earlier when, you know, Monica, you're talking about L&D as the superheroes and how we're the enablers, right? And I think that's a really, really important point, because I think often when we're L&D professionals working with the business, sometimes we can be seen as a barrier, I think, to getting things done quickly. And so when we're wanting to design things from a perspective that makes them highly engaged, dynamic, that can take more time. When we're asking for metrics around the impact, that's seen as a little bit, you know, Jesus is complicated. So I think if we can be seen as an enabler and that we're delivering learning in a way that is much more impactful, and that we can show that it's having that impact on the business, the contribution that we're bringing. And again, I think it's very much from that learning and the flow of work, those 3 Js. I think the learning is going to stick so much more. I think as if we're using behavioral economics talks to us a lot about how can you take away friction so that people will change their behavior more easily. How can you use nudges, for example, also to make sure that we're not forgetting as soon as we step out of the classroom if we want to be actually changing behaviors and changing people's reflexes. So we kind of have this vision of 2030 where we're hoping that AI is going to help us create this ecosystem where learning is just a daily type of opportunity, but we're able to push different types of initiatives to people depending on what role they're in, what their career aspirations might be, what people last year found was helpful for them in terms of getting promoted, kind of a Netflix kind of approach, right? This was something that was, highly appreciated by your peers. Have you thought about doing this? And Kim, you might start really low on the learning the new technology tool, but Samantha, you're going to start up here, right? And so I think there's something there for me, that promise, that enabler, that solution, and not just the disruptor, that I'm super excited about.
Yeah, that's a really cool concept, like the Netflix, like the suggested based off of your recent watching history, right? So, or what your colleagues are up to, what's going on in the area. And, we talked a lot about reinventing ourselves and, it's inevitable, like it's something we have to continuously learn to create this edge. We need to create this human edge. And so I'm just curious between you two, do you feel that people are feeling intimidated by the fact that now AI is continuously learning and now that means that humans have to continuously learn? I mentioned the people that want to stay in their lane, do their job and go home. So what do you think happens to managers trying to, like, what is the role of people managers to support this? And like, what happens to those people who are having a hard time to reinvent themselves now? Monica, if you want to go.
How frank should I be?
Frank.
I mean, honestly, you need to do the mindset shift. You need to be ready to learn around this. You won't succeed if you don't have a growth mindset today. So that's for sure. Sorry to say it. I think we need to. That's a big role for us to help people understand that, and that's maybe not today or tomorrow, but in the long term, we need to help people, and that long term is not as long as it used to be. So, how can we help people adopt to the reality that we are in today? And yeah, uh, it's about leaders being open to that they will not always be the smartest person in the room. But we as a collaborative part and meeting in the room are the smartest together. So that's the mindset we need to have.
Kim, what do you think?
Totally agree that that's the mindset we need to have. And I think this is where I try to go back to what I learned in my PhD on intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, right? And so ideally, we're not using extrinsic motivation. Ideally, we have people, learners in front of us who are super excited to be learning all of these new skills, and that's great. And that makes our job a lot easier, but we don't always have that. So how are we using the other types of motivation, such as really making them understand what's in it for them, right? And how is this important for you? And so as long as there's some type of choice, we tend to get people a lot more motivated. And as long as they understand the importance to them. So that's something that we're trying to make more explicit, because I think a lot of people in the business we tend to take for granted that of course they understand they need to do this, but not necessarily, right? And then it's not just for the organization, it's for you too. And I think that attaching to that notion of reinventing ourselves, like it's a great opportunity to help people take a step back and say, so this is your job today. Your job tomorrow is going to look very different. How do you want to leverage your strengths? What's super interesting for you? Where would you like to develop yourself or upskill or reskill yourself? There's going to be new types of jobs that don't even exist that are going to come about, right? And so I think if we can help people just have those kind of reflections, and I'm throwing it back to you and your organization, Samantha, right? Like Sama coaching, I think is a great way where we can be leveraging coaching to help people have this safe environment where we're helping them bring about some of these reflections.
Yeah, it's a good point because when we're trying to move through resilience and the change management and all those things, having a sounding board of a human
Mhm.
with you, helping you get through that and being motivated. And we talked about this feeling so big. And Monica, you mentioned to me about doing things with baby steps, and like that's how you approach this today. So tell me a little bit about how you're helping with baby steps versus looking at this, grand thing we got to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all about creating small habits that will help me change in the long run. And to reach the goals. And if we can support organization to understand that this is not about the organizational future star or big strategy, it is, and that's where we're going, but crystallizing the small baby steps, meaning the habits on how we all can help to get there, that will make this feel tangible and real for people, and that's easier than to grasp, I would say.
Yeah. And we talk about this types of motivation, like not doing it for the business, not doing it for the North Star of the organization, but having it so that we're as humans moving towards the same achievement to use AI to enhance our human edge to stay competitive in the evolving marketplace. And, is it possible that we can make this not about saving my job, but more as a collective goal? Because as human beings, something that's unique about us as humans is that if we put our minds to something, there's really nothing we can't achieve together. So, Kim, you're the motivation PhD. Is this something that we could do as a collective that becomes a human goal with changing with AI?
So that would be great, I think, right? I think it's a very exciting aspirational goal. Because I think, if the reason we do things feels very differently, right? Like you're saying, like if we're doing this because I'm scared and I'm playing defense and I'm scared about my job, then I'm going to be feeling that very different, even sensations in my body. I feel that very differently. It's like a weight, it's an additional pressure, as opposed to choosing to do this because you know what? AI might actually be the savior of a lot of our collective problems across the world. Like, how is the AI going to help us with our climate crisis, for example? Or so I think it's very aspirational. I love it. I think the challenge, and you kind of alluded to it too, is how can it make us more competitive to not think competitive us against them,
Mhm.
right? So it's going to take some great leadership here, I think, that if we want to create some type of collective goal, but I love the idea.
What do you think, Monica?
I'm back to collaboration again. It's not about winning over AI, right? It's about kind of making sure that we are winners together with AI, because that's the future ahead of us, and it's about making the most of that future and in parallel work together.
Speaking of future, we're going to kick it off to the last third part. And thank you for all of you sticking around. Just have a few more questions left, but I wanted to transition now to the next 5 years. So, just asking the crowd, what do you think will be the most valuable human contribution at work in the next 5 years? So, if you guys see the Slido, it will be up on the right side. Okay. Emotional intelligence and relationship building. Looks like it's the number one choice. Oh, human judgment, ethical decision making. Give it just a few minutes, or well, not a few minutes, a few seconds. Some more answers. All right, so it looks like emotional intelligence and relationship building, all of the above. I agree with all of the above, to be honest. And you know, Monica, I'm going to ask you, in the next 5 years, what do you think will be the most valuable human contribution at work?
It's the dialogues, and now we can ask ChatGPT anything, right, or whichever tool we're using, but it's about continue to ask your colleagues, continue to understand what are they doing that impacting me. So I think that we have a big role in making people find those types of collaborations still, because yes, you can get an answer from the tool, but will you get the best answer and take in all aspects? Back to what we talked about previously, ask the tool, but don't forget the people. So the human collaboration and dialogue.
What about for you, Kim?
I think it's very similar. I guess the word I would use just to bring a little bit of a different, angle is connection. We did a workshop about a month ago in HR about how to use agentic AI, and we took an example of our onboarding process. And it's fascinating to see how you can use these different types of agents to streamline the entire process if you want to. But then the challenge is to step back and say, where do I choose intentionally to amp up the human? Right? Because as you're onboarding a new employee, if you do this completely virtually and through a machine, you're not creating that connection right from the beginning, which is so critical. So I think that's what's going to be really important, is that not letting technology go so far that we're not purposely integrating the human, and even putting the human, like I said, amped up sometimes purposely.
Yeah, it's so right, because imagine starting your first day at work and you only interact with an AI bot.
Yeah.
It's like that would be a really sad day, really sad first day of work.
And honestly, I guess to add, it will be we will be more isolated than during COVID, if that's where we're going. So let's have that in mind in terms of the human interaction and how important that is as well.
Yeah. And so I guess the most valuable human contribution at work is the human side of things. And this is my last question to the panelists, and we'll kick it out to the crowd. But Kim and Monica, if you could leave one piece of advice for the people on the webinar today, what would you say that you would want them to walk away with?
Be
Monica?
bold. Be bold is my be bold in trying, and make sure that you're close to the business, because it might be that they are moving faster than you, and as an L&D you want to be in the forefront, to really understand the needs of the business.
Definitely. Your
I
turn.
like that. Maybe I would say the two words that come to mind for me are, we've been talking about continuous learning the whole time. So be curious, I think, right? So that you're leaning in, that you're trying things, that you're interested. And the other would be intentional. Because I think, like we talked about, if we let things slide too much, if we're not purposely putting the human in, if we're not purposely experimenting with things, but we're just kind of throwing ourselves everywhere, then I think we're going to be diluting the impact that we can have.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, you two. And then what I'm going to do is we have a Q&A at the bottom. So if anybody has any questions, please throw them in there. We have a couple already. So I'm going to start with the ones that we've gotten, and anybody on the call, please throw some questions in there. First question is, how can leaders role model the right mindset when they themselves are uncertain about AI? That's a really good question. Either of you can answer.
Be vocal about that they are uncertain about AI. That's a very good start of role modeling, right? To start with that.
Do you want to add anything, Kim?
I think, to Monica's point, it's all about being authentic, right? And being vulnerable sometimes too, right? So like I said, I make fun of myself with technology because I'm really not that great, and so my team, because I make fun of myself, they feel more comfortable trying things out and laughing about it too. So I think it just brings maybe a bit more of a lightness to the learning environment. And so it's not that every leader has to have it all right, but they're trying. right? And I think that's important, right? So be vulnerable, but be positive still too. And we're gonna keep trying, and we're gonna see where this leads us.
Okay. And this next question is kind of similar to the last one, but what's the mindset shift leaders need to model to make AI adoption successful? So
Trying to come up with something different,
I
honestly.
think that's kind of the same question. So I don't think we need to fully answer that unless you guys have something that really pressing comes to mind. No? Okay. Well, I think I would just wanted to thank both of you and everyone who's joined us and shared today. So at Sama, we believe in the human edge. So supporting people through human coaching, enhanced by AI, so they can grow personally, perform professionally, while creating a culture of performance at the organization to keep up in today's ever-changing world. So it's going to take everybody reinventing the workforce and themselves so that we can stay ahead of the curve. All of you are going to be receiving a recording of today's session and a guide to get things moving at your organization. And we look forward to continuing the conversation. So thank you everyone for being here. Have a nice day or night, depending on where you are.